Hello, everyone. Welcome to another 3D Total interview. Today, I have the amazing Abigail Larson. If you're not familiar with her work, she's an illustrator who has a unique style capturing dark fantasy illustrations. She has worked on so many titles and has had her work displayed in multiple galleries and published in multiple magazines like Imagine Effects, Spectrum. She also has her own art book, tarot decks. In fact, like it goes on and on. She's just like a phenomenal illustrator. So thank you so much, Abigail, for being here with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Of course, like I mentioned earlier, I love your work. I've been following your art since 2017. I am just stunned each time you post an illustration and it's like mixed media. It just like blows my mind. It's so stunning. It's
Thank
gorgeous.
you.
All the beautiful women with the flowy gowns and like I love everything about your artwork. So let's start there, right? Can you tell us a bit about your creative journey and how you developed your art and just, tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, sure. I started drawing like most kids, when I was little with crayons, and it was one of those things I knew early on. I loved to draw, and I liked storytelling with drawing. Like I was obsessed with book illustrations, fairy tales. I had tons of them, and it was something I always loved. And both of my parents are into museums, in museum work. My dad's an archaeologist, and my mom is a historian. And so I was always surrounded with art. It was in our home. We would go to galleries, and it was something I was always, it was always in my proximity. So I knew as I got a little older, like into high school, and I was practicing more often. And it was one of those things that was like, it was a hobby, but it was turning into something that I thought I could eventually turn into a career. And I was very fortunate to have super supportive parents who, were excited about this and helped me um, and supported um, that part of my journey. And I also was extremely fortunate to have wonderful teachers. I had awesome teachers from middle school all through college who um, saw my drive, and were able to push me in the right direction. And so it was a little bit of knowing exactly what I wanted to do. That if I couldn't draw, I didn't know what kind of career I could have because this was my one thing that I could do. So it was something I pursued early on. And it was in college when I started building my portfolio and started getting clients, and I was doing freelance work. And it was mostly small stuff, little local galleries, that kind of thing. And my love of fairy tales and spooky stories and things like that has been with me my whole life. I was a big monster movie fan. I've watched, my dad was into all the old black and white, creepy monster movies. We watched them all the time. And so like that sort of thing was a big inspiration for me to explore in my work, a lot of gothic art, that kind of stuff. And so those two things meshed, my love of drawing and illustration with my love of monsters and witches and scary stories and fairy tales and all that kind of stuff. So it sort of converged when I was in college, and I was able to build my portfolio around these things and really hone my style because I was trained classically, with oil paint and color theory and anatomy and perspective and portraiture, all the very basic art fundamentals. So I learned to do all of that and then broke that down as I got older and sort of developed my style based on things that I liked, illustrators that I enjoyed, like Tony DiTerlizzi and Gris Grimley and folks like that.
Yeah, I think a lot of artists can relate, that feeling of like, this is what I want to do, right? Like, what else
Yeah.
can I do? Like, if not making art for like my life. But I am curious. I don't know if this happened to you, but just in case I want to ask, some artists have that like aha moment. Like, you've been drawing since like you were a kid, right? But like for some reason, it's like, oh, this is what I'm gonna do. But do you remember that specific moment? Like, what was that thing that just made you realize, like, huh, no, this I want to do this, like some artists watch a particular movie, maybe an animation, and like that's what I want to do. Like what, like I know you've been drawing, but like did you have any like specific like moment where it was just like, no, this is what I have to do. Like this like is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah, there were a couple things. The first time I remember thinking this is what I want to do was my grandmother got me a really cute Arthur Rackham book that was, I think it was one of his Shakespeare ones. I think it was Midsummer Night's Dream, I believe. And it had, Titania, like the fairies and all the, beautiful forest scene. And I read that book over and over again. And I was so attached to the imagery that went with it. And it was something that I had thought, I don't know, so it was sort of magical. Like there was something so special and, um, I mean, I would say dark. There was something like dark and creepy about it, which I was drawn to, but it was still a fairy tale and still, you know, dreamlike and surreal. I remember that book particularly changing my life as a kid, I mean, I say kid, I think I was in middle school. But that really stood out to me and really made me think, could I do this as well? Could I, all the drawings and sketching that I do on the site, could I turn this into something where I could be a storyteller, where could I illustrate a book like this? Could I use my skills and my vision to do this kind of thing that Arthur Rackham was doing? And he was my main inspiration for a long time. And a little while later in high school, I took a trip to London. I went to the Tate Museum and I got to see Arthur Rackham paintings in person. They're huge, beautiful watercolors. And I saw another one of my favorite artists, pre-Raphaelite artist, John William Waterhouse. I got to see his paintings, and seeing them in a book when I was young and being inspired. And I would do like copies of their work to learn how they drew. But seeing them in person in a museum and how big and amazing and engaging they were in person, standing in front of them was something that also made me think, it's physical and in front of me. I can do this too. And I really want to do something like this and tell stories in this way. And so those were two events, I guess, that really stick with me to this day. Yes.
I can clearly see your like the influences in your work, your dark folklore, like kind of gothic, creepy, but also beautiful. Like
Thanks.
I just absolutely love it. It's stunning. Um, I wanted to know more about your inspiration. Like, I wanted to go dive deeper into your inspirations. Do you have anything in particular that like you reach for when you want to be inspired? You just look through Pinterest. How do you gather like inspiration? How do you come up with ideas for your art? I know you have like your tarot decks, so maybe like, but like, what do you reach out for? What do you look to inspire you when you're trying to come up with an idea?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's something I think lots of creative people struggle with. No matter what your medium is, finding that spark for creativity is it's a constant battle. Sometimes, find you can get inspired by one thing and then come back to it years later and it doesn't do it for you again. So you do kind of have to keep your inspiration fresh. Um, I do a lot of stuff. Pinterest definitely. Pinterest is sort of my go-to for mood and color and things like that, where I'm struggling with a piece and I don't know where to start, or if I get like halfway into a piece and don't know how to start coloring it. Pinterest is amazing for that because it's such a good it's just a huge amalgamation of imagery that is all kind of similar. Like if you're looking at some, like I look at a lot of interiors. I love interior photography, like beautiful French chateaus and stuff like that. So if you click on one of them, you'll get a ton more. You can like lose yourself for hours on Pinterest doing that, and that's a great source of inspiration for me because drawing architecture and interiors is something I struggle with for a long time, and having good inspiration that sort of jogs my creativity is a huge help. But definitely all the usual stuff, finding, really cool music to listen to or a great movie. I'll go to galleries or museums and see some other artwork that inspires me. I'll watch YouTube, I'll watch interviews with other artists, and watching interviews with other artists to me really, even if it's art that isn't like mine or isn't even similar, still that gets the creativity going for me. There are so many things. Definitely books. I love to go to bookshops and find cool books and all that kind of stuff. All of it is very inspiring.
Yeah, inspiration is all around us, right? We just have to like look for
Yes.
it and see what
Yeah.
sparks it. Speaking of art books, you recently contributed heavily to 3D Total's newest title, Field Guide to Witches. Can you tell us a bit more about your experience working on it? I was blown away when I saw the book. It just looked so stunning. Your illustration on the cover just captures and
Thank
embodies
you.
what the book is trying to convey. And looking like just like flipping through, like on the preview, it just looks stunning. Can you share a bit about your contribution? What was your experience like working on your part of the contribution?
Yeah, it was amazing. Just in general, it was such a fun and perfect project for me. I really, really enjoyed it. And I knew when they approached me, it was just to do one of the chapters on La Befana, which of course I live in Italy, so La Befana is a big deal here. She's a very popular witch. And so that was just a lot of fun. I got to do a little bit of research. I got to do some writing, two things I really love doing and never really get to do professionally. I'm always the illustrator. I never really get to write very much. So that was really fun. And of course, sketching witches. I mean, that's just my dream right there. It's just a ton of fun. I really enjoy it. Um, and of course, when they came to me for the cover art, it was extra exciting because I got to see artwork from some of the other contributing artists. Everyone who was in this book is incredible. It's all different styles, but it all works really well together. Each one, it's so cohesive. It's such a great lineup of artists, and I was really excited to see like a little peek behind the scenes of some of the stuff that people had turned in. And so it was really cool to draw all of these characters, that I was familiar with, but they had already been designed by other artists. So I got to kind of play with their designs and do it in my style, which was it's so much fun. It's not something I get to do very often. It was just really cool.
No, totally. I think, like you said, it's a perfect project for you. I think like it just encapsulates everything that you're like, oh, your interest, the folklore, dark fan. It's just like
Oh
perfect. Like
yeah.
so it's like the cover is stunning. And as you mentioned, all
Thank
the
you.
artists that worked on it, it's like amazing artists to amazing artists to me. It's just like a
Exactly.
beautiful lineup. And I
Great
think
lineup.
everyone captured their witches. You could tell there's a lot of passion that went into developing each and every
Absolutely.
character in the book. And I absolutely love that. So I want to know, the book focuses more on like the iteration and everything, but I want to know more about your creative process. Can you tell us what your creative process into like creating an illustration? How does it look like? Do you start? I know you share some of your behind the scenes, but like, can you just tell us a bit more, like the entire pipeline of creating an illustration?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's two versions, and my style has changed a little bit recently. I am now almost entirely digital art, but generally speaking, I start on paper on a sketch pad, and I'll do a whole bunch of sketches in pencil, and then I'll scan them into Photoshop, sort of arrange them and fix things that I need to fix, blow them up, print them out really big, and then I'll use my light table behind me and trace it onto watercolor paper. And so it's like it becomes an ink wash at that point. I'll use a little bit of watercolor to get the texture and that sort of organic watercolor feel. Then I'll take that, scan it, and finish it completely in Photoshop. I do all the coloring and editing in Photoshop. But now, especially with the Witch project, I did both. The cover is traditional with a little bit of digital coloring, and my Befana chapter is all digital sketching. So it's been a little bit of that was a lot of finding good poses, which was kind of a challenge because they wanted a good number. Like you had to fill up a page. So I had to have, it's just the one character. So I had to find, how do I, if she's going to be riding a broomstick, I can only do that once or twice. So she's going to be standing, holding her broom or a cane. And, you got to kind of find interesting variations for this. So that was a lot of just touch and go, playing around and trying different things to see what worked and what looked visually interesting. So it was just a lot of sketching, a lot of brainstorming, coming up with costume ideas, things like that. And the final piece, which to mimic my watercolor texture, I did a big sheet of watercolor, like just plain, no ink or anything, just a big watercolor piece, and scanned that as texture and then overlaid that digitally so that I could kind of make it look like it had a little bit of traditional stuff that was mixed in. And that's pretty much it. Everything is all done on like 2 or 3 layers. I don't do a ton of fancy stuff in Photoshop because I'm honestly not very good at it. I know how to use like the pencil tool and a couple other things, but that's about it. Um, So that was pretty much it. It was very simple, especially because this was just sketches in black and white. So it was pretty straightforward.
It's amazing how you can translate your style from digital to traditional and it still looks all cohesive. That's amazing. That could
Thank
never be
you.
me. That could
Sometimes I'm
never be
not
me.
sure.
My art is always so different from like my sketchbook, everything. It's just like I don't know how to translate it. So it's amazing that you can do that. It's wonderful.
Thank
I
you.
yeah, I wouldn't even notice if you didn't tell me really.
That's great to hear.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to dive back to your like work experience. You've been working as an illustrator professionally, and I want to know what are some of your like highest moments and lowest moments working as, artists. We all be like, it's a dream to be an artist, but then it's never just like all like flowers and daisies,
Oh
We have
yeah.
the high moments, the like perfect, and then really low moments. If you can share with us, like, what are some of your highest moments and your lowest moments, and what did you do to try to like get over like that low moments?
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great question, and it's something like you said, all artists deal with this, but it's not something people often talk about. I think because it can be, it's different for everybody, and it can be a little uncomfortable depending on the situation. But definitely, like my high moments are every project I work on, I can find something really exciting about it, and really find something that I enjoy about it. Of course, all the tarot decks have, they were so much fun to create, but there's so much work, and it was so many late nights. And I was the last one I did, the horror tarot, was all Halloween sort of themed, a lot of spooky stuff, really fun things to draw, all kinds of things I like, vampires, monsters, all that stuff. But I was working full time at Netflix at the time when it was due. I had to finish it in 4 months, and I had to work through all the holiday break. And I was up until 3 a.m. every night. I was working every weekend. I did not go anywhere. I was like literally stuck in here working on it all the time until it was finished. And that, I mean, I would never suggest an artist who wants to do a tarot deck. I would never say, you anyone can do it in 4 months, because I did it. I would not recommend it. I only did it because the publisher had a deadline, and that was the time frame I was given to work in, and I just had to get it done. So that was really tough. And I mean, again, like working at Netflix was such an awesome job. I was a character designer on a show that's coming up, and it was one of my, I mean, just an incredible experience. One of my best job experiences. It was my first time in animation with a huge studio, and it was so awesome. But again, lots of late nights. They're in LA, I'm in Italy, so the timing was really tricky. And um, after that job wrapped in February, and I'm still dealing with like touch and go burnout from that. It was just such intense, I mean, a huge amount of work. It was just, meetings and all kinds of stuff that I normally don't have to deal with as a freelancer, where I'm just sort of alone in my studio and just like working here. And it's very quiet. That was a huge team project. And it was very like you have to be on all the time, and very, very demanding deadlines, all that stuff. It was awesome. I learned a ton. I'm so proud of the work I did on that show, but it was a lot. And it was, I sort of threw myself into that without realizing how much work goes into something like this. And definitely was paying for it months afterwards. I went through so much, just kind of spiraling into burnout, where I would try to draw, I would open up, a sketchbook, or try and draw something, try and find some inspiration, like the things I normally do, nothing did it for me. So I was just in a terrible rut. And one of the things I did to get over it really was just to take some time off. I didn't draw anything for, I think it was like 3 solid weeks, which is a lot for me. I'm usually drawing every day. So taking off a full month, I took 2 vacations. I like literally left my apartment. I had to like go to another country and like hang out somewhere else that was just not anywhere, or not surrounded by art at all. That helped me a ton, just to, I mean, and that seems like it should be so easy, like of course a vacation helps, like, that's just, but it really was the only thing that I could do to get through that and sort of find my way back to my work. And part of the other reason that I had to get out of my burnout rut was that I did get other jobs. I had jobs that came in. I have a a illustration job that came in with Disney Publishing. It was a job I couldn't say no to because it was Disney. I was like, this is so much fun. I have to do this. This would be great. And I just sort of had to force myself to try and work on it. And as I did, after I came back and was, ready to handle this again, it was slow going, but I eventually got back into my flow, which was really good. But yeah, it's a tough thing that I think every creative person deals with. It can be so hard to find inspiration once you've lost it, and when the things that normally spark your interests don't anymore, or for whatever reason, that can be really tough. But give it time, and it'll come back.
Definitely. Resting, I all the interviews I've had so far, every artist always mentions rest. And I think a lot of
Gotta rest.
beginner artists and just people just forget to rest. And I'm like, I
It's
cannot
true.
stress
Yeah.
how important it is to take breaks and like just regenerate and like get all that inspiration. Like it's funny, you can be in a rut and you just like take 2 days off, you're back. Depending on
Exactly.
how like
Yeah.
stressed you are, just like rest. It's
Hmm.
just take some time for yourself to like recharge is really important. So please, if you're watching this, rest. You're
Take a
allowed to
break.
rest.
Yes.
You're allowed to rest. Oh, okay. Speaking of like resting and beginner artists, right now with social media and everything, everyone that's trying to achieve like just becoming an artist seems so near yet seems so far. I don't know how to explain it. Like you see all these artists, like there's so many, and you just feel like, oh my gosh, where do I even start? Everyone seems so ahead of their journey. What advice would you give to like beginner artists who are trying to get their work published or become freelancers or even work in animation? What advice would you give to them starting out?
Yep. It's a tough one because it changes all the time. Like with tech changing, with social media changing, what worked for me 15, 16 years ago when I was first getting started would not work today. I had teachers when I was in college who were telling us you had to have a physical portfolio, like an actual physical work that you had to go and travel to New York City and get physically showed to galleries and agents and publishers. That doesn't really exist anymore. That's not how it's done. So much is done online now, which is awesome. And that did help me because that shift into social media happened while I was sort of struggling to find my place and, not really sure where I was going to get any jobs. That's when social media started becoming a big thing, and art directors were on them, editors were there, lots of publishers, studio scouts. They're all online. They're all looking all the time, which is awesome. And it meant that I could find work. I won't say easily, but I did eventually find work after a few years of practicing, working on my portfolio, and sort of diversifying the subject matter that I was doing, not just like a bunch of pretty characters, but drawing, backgrounds and vehicles and scenery, like all that kind of stuff that you have to have in your portfolio to show that you know what you're doing. Um, it has been a huge help, but it can be definitely overwhelming for young artists to be so bombarded with so much great art. It's easy to be scrolling Instagram and seeing, one after the other beautiful illustrations. Someone's getting published in a book and someone's being featured in this magazine, and it seems like everyone's getting something done and you're not. I definitely have been in that position. Every single artist has. Like, that's something a lot of young artists need to understand, though, is like even those of us who are working or professionals or seem like we are on the top of our career, we're always looking for the next job as well. That never stops. That's sort of the life of a freelancer. Another thing that helped me out was having an agent. That is something that is a little trickier to do. It's not always feasible because there's only so many agents. But I in my career I've had three agents, and one was great, but she quit after a while. She had to stopped being an agent for a period of time. So I was passed on to another agent who was not very good. And it ended up being like I was finding more work for myself than my agent was. So that was kind of a letdown. And now I have a new agent who's wonderful. So yeah, I just sort of flip flop through this, but I had long periods of time where I was not represented. And it is harder to find publishing work and animation work if you don't have someone to represent you. it's not impossible. There's plenty of jobs out there for freelancers who are not represented by someone, but it does help. And if you can pitch to an agent and an agent can pick you up, those you're already like a great step up. So that is something I would look into definitely. But some of my best advice to young artists who want to be an illustrator or do what I do is to get a list of all of your favorite publishers, any companies, studios you want to work for, get a list of them, write them down, and then go through each one, go onto their websites, find their contact and submission info, because almost all publishers have submission info on their websites, and do it. Just try, and you won't get feedback, or you might get rejected right away, and that doesn't mean you have to stop being an artist. It just means keep working, keep practicing, add more things to your portfolio, maybe take some things out, and try again in 6 months or another year. Just keep at it and keep trying, and you'll eventually get there.
Thank you so much for that advice. Some people don't know that they can take the first step. Sometimes
Yep.
you're like waiting for like people to reach out, but sometimes, maybe you try reaching out. Like,
You got to be the one to do it.
yeah,
Yes.
and that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with being the person to take the first step, because maybe they just never found you, and you might be that person they are looking for that specific project. You never know.
Yep.
But I think that's solid advice, definitely. Thank you so much, Abigail. We've been going for over a while now, and like I mentioned at the beginning, I don't want to take too much of your time. If there's anything else you would like to say before we conclude the interview, the table's yours.
Oh, thanks so much. This has been awesome. It's great to chat with you. I don't think I have anything else to add, except people can find me online at abigaillarson.com. And I'm very approachable. If you have questions or need more advice or want to ask me about anything, you can find my contact info on my website.
Definitely follow Abigail. Like I said, stunning. You're not going to regret it. Stunning artwork, stunning. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate your time, and I'm looking forward to having the physical copy of the book. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.